So what trends do I see? Well, helpfully, here is financial inclusiveness. So at a pan-regional level, and again, forgive me again for preaching to the converted, to those who will be well aware of this, but if I look at where the industry is going to, this idea of connecting or making citizens get access to financial products and services, whether it's basic products, then becoming slightly more advanced through starting with things like micro-lending, and then becoming part of the mainstream of financial services. I've mentioned this also, which is this increased focus on governance, risk and compliance. GRC, again, is one of those acronyms that trips off the tongue. If I tell you that the program that I ran, modernising the core system, was completely out of control, not by me, I inherited it, which was fun, because it was completely out of control because there was no governance, there were no risk assessments, and God knows what we were complying with. That GRC aspect was always an essential attribute in banking. In the turbulent years post-financial crises that every economy in every part of the world has had some effect of, that GRC aspect is all the more important. I think it's also the idea of expanding in new geographies. And the temptation is sometimes to think, what does that mean in practical terms? Does it mean suddenly moving into new international markets? Or does it actually mean looking at perhaps closer to home, thinking how do we want to expand particular parts of the country in order to capture, again, the hearts and minds of our prospective clients? So it's both internal for domestic growth and it's external growth as well. And then there is this greater use of self-service. And I think self-service is something that we should all, be cognizant of, and all be aware of, because it's not just in the banking sense, with access to the ATM, or to use an application, or to use our mobile device by which to perform transactions and interactions. That self-service, that self-determination, again, that's touching every part of our daily lives. Whether it's downloading an app so that I can search for particular information without having to pick up a telephone, this drive to self-service. And also this drive towards online banking as well. I love this quote from Niels Bohr, forgive me for blocking the screen for some of you. The prediction is especially very difficult, especially when you're looking at the future. There are so many predictions that we get spectacularly wrong in life, whether it's about certain technologies. I would imagine that there's somebody in Google right now writing his resume who was formerly the head of engineering for Google Glass. Because some things in life don't go according to plan. But actually, that's an interesting point by which to make relevant to our banking sector discussion. Because often failure for innovation is seen as just that, it's seen as failure. And yet if I tell you that in the mid-1990s, so if we were to talk about this in the context of mobile, for example, I think everybody would be familiar with the concept of prepaid mobile telephony services, where you buy the voucher and you add airtime to your telephone without having to have a contract. When that was first launched, that failed in the most spectacular way within Vodafone, because we at that point got everything wrong. The handsets, the customers, the distribution network, the pricing, everything was wrong about that first launch. But instead of actually saying it's not the right time, we've got it wrong, let's put it on the shelf, let's never do it again, you can learn from that mistake, if you will, that experience. And so this idea of kind of failing and failing fast, it's okay. So predicting the future is difficult. There'll be some things that don't quite work out as we would have intended, but actually many, many things will either metamorphosize and change into something we never thought they would. From that caterpillar comes the beautiful butterfly. And so all of these advances in technology, whether it's wearables, I think lucky you have your watch. Lucky's watch is, please demonstrate like this. You've got your, here's what Lucky made earlier. All of these things are now starting to have a transformative effect. So one of the questions that I get asked a lot, and I didn't bring my crystal ball with me either, is, Alex, what does the future look like for banking? And my answer has been the same for a number of years. Not because I can't be bothered to make a new slide, but because I think this is just what the future does look like. And it's a future defined by the industry meeting its biggest challenges. If I had a laser pointer, I'd be going through them now. But I think I've covered most of them in my remarks already. Quick step through them. Regulation, innovation, keeping your shareholders happy. Really big point. Is it governments? Is it private equity? Is it individual shareholders? It's still about, and I'm sure Ron could eulogise this for a long time, it's still about not just spending money, it's about saving money and making money. It's this balance between lots of different activities. It's about, and this for me as a technology vendor is not hard to say, but it's important to acknowledge, it's about this. It's about this, which is, it's not just about the technology. We can give you the technology that makes your bank run like a Ferrari. But if you're using processes that date from 30 or 40 years ago, and the people aspect, they're not really on board with us and with you, that Ferrari-like technology will run at the pace of an old 1978 Ford. It will not deliver the value that you need and your customers. There's also this. I'm not sure when there was last ice seen in Zimbabwe, apart from in glasses and refrigerators. But there is this idea of thin ice, that the legacy technology that exists, that the banking networks are running over, is starting to fail. If it fails, it hurts you as the bank, it hurts the customer from the experience. And the customer is important. They do have a voice. If you're not engaging with your customers through social media, if you're not looking at how they're engaging with you, you're missing an opportunity. Because they're talking about you, you need to listen to them. I really should have brought my clicker. Because this one, in perhaps is the key, which is, let's get digital. If we're not digital enough today, let's drive towards digital tomorrow. And one of the things that MySys has done as part of its investment in what we see as the future is to invest heavily in our digital channels and products. That is not, repeat, not to say that we are doing anything that erodes our heritage. Our heritage is core banking technology, risks, trade finance, capital markets. That is still what MySys will be known for. But increasingly, that digital discussion penetrates those areas as well. Digital in corporate treasury is a completely separate discussion for another day. Perhaps I'll invite myself back and we'll have that discussion at another point. But digital really is everywhere. And this future is also going to be defined by the industry meeting its biggest challenges, too mandatory, too discretionary. The mandatory side I think I've covered, I'm not going to labour it to death, around regulatory compliance and risk management. Yes, really risk is everybody's business. And what we would look at is, it's not just about the exciting parts of digital in reaching out to your customer, it's also how you manage your risk strategies in terms of making sure that your lending criteria are nice and tight, that you're not exposing your bank to greater degrees of risk by using new technologies and new approaches. There is this, blue column, user experience. Some of you may have engaged with our user experience team already. If you haven't, let me quickly just give you a flavour of what it is and what it exists for. So we talk about, all of us talk about this user experience. I didn't have a great one yesterday, I'm having a much better one today. So what we've done as a software vendor is not just think, how do we make the most beautiful looking software product? How do we make it work with a tablet, with an iPhone, with an Android device? We've thought about it in terms of this user experience, the front to back journey, the end to end. So we have a user experience team within MySys so when we engage with you, working with ECB and Lucky and his colleagues, You're not just engaging with the software aspect, the millions of lines of code that I have no idea what it does, as in how it puts together, but I know what the outcome looks like. We are also looking at this from the user experience standpoint. So if you are considering going down the path of digital channels, please speak to us and we will help you with that user experience definition of what the journey need to look like as well. And that for us, and that for me as a long-term MySys watcher, as an industry analyst, and now a MySys representative, is a significant step in our evolution. Now, Bhavesh gave a quote from our CEO. He gave a quote from Nadeem Saeed. This next slide is something which rarely comes out in public, not because we're embarrassed about it, but because it's actually going to be the foundation slide for an event that we're running in Germany in a few weeks' time. And it's something I've been working with Nadeem on for about 4 months, which is how we respond to banking's outside influence. Because this really is key. This is key to your success and indeed to ours. And there are 3 groups of people who are influential in your lives and my life. One is the customer, of course. The customers, we're all customers, we can identify with this. And the customers expect an improved user experience. They expect increased satisfaction. Their expectations are rising, depending on what their baseline is. There's a sense that they're expecting more in every market that I've ever advised in. I've mentioned the regulators already here and again. The regulators expect to see that compliance being adhered to. They want mandatory reporting much, much faster. And they want confidence that they're not about to resolve, excuse me, I think that's some audio challenges here, that we're not going to have a systemic crisis brewing in our...
That's better. I just like handheld mics, but I'll work with it as a solution. Then there are your investors. And again, I've mentioned those a little bit, which is whether you're quasi-government owned, whether you're owned by a majority of private shareholders, whether you're a foreign-owned institution. And of course, your investors expect to see that improved return on equity, that return on capital employed. They expect to see a healthy dividend payment. So there are 3 distinct groups, these outside influences. There's the user experience that I mentioned a moment ago. And then there are the competitors, the challengers, should we call them, those who are trying to get a foothold in a market. And Zimbabwe is no different. So we see challenger, if not banks, then challenger organisations coming in to disintermediate and to erode your profit share, your share of the market. And if I look at the things and the developments for mobile operators, the likes of Econet, that is absolutely who I'm referring to here. And then it requires you to create a strategy which is based on satisfying the needs of these 3 audiences. And I'm not going to lie, that's tough, because you've got 3 very distinct groups. Now, why does this outside-in message matter most? Because historically, banking and banking technology has been built from the inside out. It hasn't been built with these 3 groups in mind, without thinking about their needs. It's been built by technologists doing a great job to put the technology into place. The impact on the customer, the regulator, and the investor, well, that's a secondary consideration. That, ladies and gentlemen, has to change. It is about responding to the outside influences, which is why our banners say, dotted around the room, it's all about them. So it's not about the bank building technology for the bank's comfort, it's building it to meet the needs of these 3 distinct groups. If there is one slide that you remember from this presentation about the direction that MySys believes the industry is going in, it's this one. But luckily, I've got another 60 slides to go. That's a joke. It's 59.